Welcome back to Echoes of the Past, the most famous public executions in history, where we delve into the somber and often chilling world of public executions. In part 3 of our series, we explore more tales of defiance, betrayal, and the harsh penalties that history has witnessed. From the struggle of national heroes to the tragic accused spies, each story sheds light on the darker aspects of human societies and governance. As we journey through different times and lands, we uncover the moments that not only ended lives but also shaped the collective memory and legal landscapes of nations. Join us as we continue to trace the echoes of the past, understanding more about the people and the circumstances that led to their ultimate fates. Today, we begin with a story from the misty highlands of Scotland, a tale of bravery, betrayal, and the unyielding quest for freedom. In the late 13th century, Scotland was a land under tension and turmoil. The English crown sought to solidify its grip, but the spirit of resistance was about to be embodied by a man named William Wallace. Born into the common class, Wallace would rise to become a symbol of national pride and defiance. Wallace's path to legend began in earnest with the killing of an English sheriff, setting off a series of events that would lead him to lead a guerrilla wars against the mighty English army. With a rare combination of cunning and valor, Wallace defeated the English at the Battle of Stirling Bridge in 1297. His victory was not just military but also a profound boost to Scottish morale. Wallace was appointed Guardian of Scotland, wielding power in the name of the absent King John Balliol. Yet, his position was precarious. Betrayals and the overwhelming power of the English forces continually threatened his efforts to secure Scotland's independence. Betrayed by a fellow Scot, Wallace was captured near Glasgow in 1305 and handed over to King Edward I of England. His capture marked the beginning of the end for the Scottish hero. Transported to London, Wallace was tried for treason. He famously declared that he could not be a traitor to Edward, as he had never sworn allegiance to him. Despite his defiance, he was sentenced to a gruesome execution. Executed by hanging, drawing, and quartering, Wallace's death was meant to quash the spirit of rebellion. Instead, it immortalized him as a martyr for Scottish independence. William Wallace's legacy is far-reaching, reminding us that the quest for freedom often comes at the highest cost. His story is a poignant chapter in Scotland's history and a testament to the enduring fight for national sovereignty. As we reflect on Wallace's life and legacy, stay tuned for more stories of those who faced the ultimate penalty in their fight against oppression. In the annals of American criminal history, few cases have captured the public's imagination as profoundly as the Lindbergh baby kidnapping. In 1932, the abduction and subsequent murder of Charles Lindbergh Jr., the 20-month-old son of famed aviator Charles Lindbergh, shocked the nation. The man at the center of this tragic and sensational case was Bruno Richard Hauptmann. On the night of March 1, 1932, an unknown intruder kidnapped Charles Lindbergh Jr. from his crib, leaving behind a ransom note demanding $50,000. The nation was gripped by fear and sympathy for the Lindberghs, as the authorities launched an extensive manhunt. The police, aided by federal agents and private investigators, scoured the area for clues. The media coverage was relentless, turning the case into a national obsession. Despite paying the ransom, the Lindberghs' hopes were dashed when the child's body was found in May, about 2 months later. 2 years later, a breakthrough came when a marked ransom bill was traced to Bruno Hauptmann, a German immigrant living in the Bronx. Police found additional ransom money in his garage, along with other suspicious evidence, including a piece of wood that matched the ladder used in the kidnapping. Hauptmann's trial in 1935, often called the trial of the century, was a media spectacle. The prosecution presented a compelling case, linking him to the ransom money, the handwriting on the ransom notes, and the construction of the ladder. Hauptmann maintained his innocence, claiming he was framed, but the jury was convinced of his guilt.
Those certificates and put them in a basket, one after another, 5, 10, 20, whatever they were, you can count it. And you left it laying in a basket all night and you didn't count it. You left it another night and you didn't count it. That's the reason you didn't count it was because you knew, didn't you?
During the cross-examination, Hauptmann contradicts himself and is forced to admit that he lied.
The state of New Jersey has rested its case, convinced that it has clearly shown that the defendant Bruno Richard Hauptmann came to the state of New Jersey on the night of March the 1st, 1932, brought the ladder which he built to the Lindbergh estate, climbed into the Lindbergh nursery, took the Lindbergh child and murdered it.
On February 13, 1935, Bruno Hauptmann was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. His appeals were denied, and despite public appeals for clemency, he was executed in the electric chair at Trenton State Prison on April 3, 1936.
Into the New Jersey State Prison at Trenton, who are to see Bruno Richard Hauptmann die for the kidnapping and murder of a Lindbergh baby. And so, silent and stolid, Hauptmann goes to the chair of doom, paying with his life for the crime that rocked the world. Now,
the execution did not end the controversy. Doubts about Hauptmann's guilt persisted, with some arguing that he was a scapegoat in a case marred by intense media pressure and possible miscarriage of justice. Various books, articles, and even some officials questioned the strength of the evidence against him. The case of Bruno Hauptmann remains one of the most debated in American legal history, a haunting reminder of the era's challenges in forensic science and the profound impact of public opinion on justice. It serves as a cautionary tale of the complexity surrounding high-profile criminal cases. In the Roaring Twenties, a decade known for its cultural upheaval and economic prosperity, the case of Ruth Snyder shocked America. It was a story of love, betrayal, and cold-blooded murder, culminating in one of the most infamous executions of the era. Ruth Snyder was a housewife in Queens, New York, married to Albert Snyder, a magazine editor. Their marriage was troubled, and Ruth soon began an affair with Henry Judd Gray, a corset salesman. The two lovers concocted a plan to murder Albert, hoping to collect on a life insurance policy Ruth had persuaded him to take out. On the night of March 20, 1927, Ruth and Judd executed their plan. They bludgeoned Albert, strangled him with picture wire, and attempted to stage the scene as a botched burglary. However, their sloppy execution and conflicting stories quickly raised suspicion. The investigation quickly unraveled the truth. Police found evidence linking Ruth and Judd to the crime, and their inconsistent alibis sealed their fate. The trial, held in 1927, was a media sensation, drawing crowds and headlines across the nation. Ruth Snyder's composed demeanor contrasted with Judd Gray's emotional breakdown, but both were found guilty of first-degree murder. The jury's verdict was swift, and both were sentenced to death in electric chair. On January 12, 1928, Ruth Snyder and Judd Gray were executed at Sing Sing prison. Snyder's execution gained notoriety due to secretly taken photograph by a journalist, which was published on the front page of the New York Daily News the next day. The photograph of Ruth Snyder in the electric chair became one of the most famous images of the era, sparking debates about the morality and spectacle of capital punishment. It highlighted the media's role in sensationalizing crime and punishment. The case of Ruth Snyder and Judd Gray remains a stark reminder of the era's tumultuous mix of passion, betrayal, and justice. Their story, immortalized by a single photograph, continues to evoke questions about the ethics of media coverage and the nature of capital punishment. Stay tuned for the next segment as we continue to explore the most famous public executions in history. In the shadow of the Cold War, amidst a climate of fear and suspicion, the case of Ethel and Julius Rosenberg emerged as one of the most controversial espionage trials in American history. Accused of passing atomic secrets to the Soviet Union, their trial and execution sparked intense debate and left a lasting impact on the nation. Ethel and Julius Rosenberg were a married couple living in New York City, raising their two sons during the turbulent years of the early Cold War. Julius, an electrical engineer, and Ethel, a secretary, were both committed communists. Their ideological beliefs would eventually place them at the center of a high-stakes espionage case. In 1950, following the arrest of Ethel's brother, David Greenglass, who confessed to passing secrets to the Soviets, the FBI arrested the Rosenbergs. They were accused of leading a spy ring that transmitted crucial information about the atomic bomb to the Soviet Union. The trial of Ethel and Julius Rosenberg began in March 1951, drawing massive media attention. The prosecution's case relied heavily on the testimony of Greenglass and other key witnesses, who described a network of espionage with the Rosenbergs at its center. Despite their staunch denials and claims of innocence, the jury found the Rosenbergs guilty of conspiracy to commit espionage. On April 5, 1951, they were sentenced to death, making them the first American civilians to receive such a sentence for espionage. As the Rosenbergs awaited their fate, public opinion was sharply divided. Protests and appeals for clemency emerged globally, with many arguing that their execution would be a grave injustice. Despite these efforts, the Supreme Court upheld their conviction, and President Eisenhower refused to grant clemency. On June 19, 1953, Ethel and Julius Rosenberg were executed in the electric chair at Sing Sing prison. Their deaths were met with both condemnation and support, reflecting the deep divisions of the era. The execution of Ethel and Julius Rosenberg remains a contentious chapter in American history, emblematic of the paranoia and political strife of the Cold War. Their story continues to provoke debate over justice, political persecution, and the true extent of their involvement in espionage. In the tumultuous landscape of Tudor England, one man's steadfast principles would lead him to the scaffold. Sir Thomas More, a respected scholar, lawyer, and statesman, met his fate due to his unyielding opposition to King Henry VIII's break from the Roman Catholic Church. His execution in 1535 remains a powerful testament to the clash between conscience and royal authority. Born in 1478, Thomas More was a man of profound intellect and integrity. He studies at Oxford and became a distinguished lawyer, eventually rising to serve as a key advisor to King Henry VIII. More's reputation for wisdom and piety earned him the position of Lord Chancellor, making him one of the most powerful men in England. As Lord Chancellor, More was known for his fairness and commitment to justice. However, his devout Catholic faith would soon put him at odds with the king. The seismic shift came when Henry VIII sought to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon, a move opposed by the Pope. In defiance, Henry declared himself the supreme head of the Church of England, severing ties with Rome. More, a staunch Catholic, refused to support the king's supremacy over the Church. More's refusal to endorse the Act of Supremacy and the king's marriage to Catherine of Aragon led to his resignation as Lord Chancellor. Despite his hopes for a quiet life, More was soon arrested for treason and imprisoned in the Tower of London. More's trial in 1535 was marked by his eloquent and reasoned defense, asserting that he could not go against his conscience and the teachings of the Church. However, the outcome was predetermined. He was found guilty of treason and sentenced to death. On July 6, 1535, More was led to the scaffold on Tower Hill. Facing death with serene courage, he famously declared, "I die the king's good servant, but God's first." His execution was carried out swiftly, his final moments marked by his unwavering faith. The execution of Thomas More is a poignant reminder of the deadly intersection of faith and politics in Tudor England. Canonized as a saint by the Catholic Church in 1935, More's legacy endures as a symbol of integrity and moral conviction. His story continues to inspire those who value conscience over compliance. As we reflect on the lives and legacies of these figures, their stories remind us of the enduring struggle for justice, faith, freedom, betrayal, and treason. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more insightful historical narratives. Stay tuned for our next episode as we continue to uncover the past.